Hi everyone, welcome. Out here on my bench with a number of other things, as you can see, are the mixed red worms. These are the worms that are living in a bin built out of a whole bunch of old twine of various different shapes and sizes, even certain pieces of twine that are like really thick material, thick as my finger. Usually you think of twine, it's like something that's there to wrap up a bundle of newspaper or something. Some of this stuff is like really heavy duty, thick stuff, so you'll see when we get in there. But before we do, let's just go really quick over the stats for the system. 142 days in service. There have been, so far, 11 feedings. This will be feeding number 12, and 10 days have passed since the last feeding. It seems like we've been in a pattern, so to speak, because I believe the last 3 or 4 feedings have been on 10-day intervals. Originally, we started out with 14-day intervals. It seems like we're in a continuous pattern of 14-day intervals, and now lately we're in 10-day intervals. So here in the middle, obviously, we've got some stuff from my freezer, the foods that we're going to give them. Here in this box, I've got my freshly reloaded supply of leaves. This system, I don't know if it's received one of those fancy top dressing, top coatings of leaves yet, so I figured we'd treat the system to one of those this time. I got a bunch of napkins here I want to do away with. In this little container right here is my pulverized eggshell that I use as grit. So let's get to feeding these little guys. Alrighty. So we got a few little hitchhikers that we're going to try to evict, because this top covering is just going to sit out here in the bright lights, and I hate to think that these worms would get freaked out and try fleeing. We won't be too long, but I think we got the majority of them off. This top covering newspaper has been going for some time now. That's why I kind of had that idea that perhaps on this go around we could repurpose it to be sort of supplementary bedding to accompany the feedings, and then leaves would come in to replace it. So the reason I refer to it as feedings is because the way we've been organizing the feedings in here was even depicted here briefly, but I didn't really explain what this meant. But the diagram just shows how we put some food in the middle, and then we put some food where the other two little X's are. So some food out here, some food out here. And what we've been doing lately is we've been kind of switching. We would always put food down the middle each time, but perhaps one time we would, maybe 2 feedings ago, I suppose, we must have fed out here on these edges, and then the last feeding we fed along these edges. So along the edges we've been just alternating. So we're going to keep up with that, I believe. So let's just begin with the middle area where we've got ourselves a little bit of a trench into which we always return to plop in the day's meal. It sure seems like the feeding zone here in the middle, at least, is a pretty busy one. Oh boy, yeah, we've got ourselves something of a worm party going on over here, it seems. Yeah, there's like a piece of paper there that a lot of these worms are on, so they've got nothing to burrow into. They're just going to squirm around, try to dive in underneath each other and stuff, but perhaps we'll limit our gawking on this occasion so that they're not feeling so distressed out here in the bright lights. Well, I didn't really want to go on too long, and it did start to seem like these guys were all managing to find their way out of the bright lights, despite the fact that there's a piece of paper right beneath them. I could feel a lot of them on the palm of my hand underneath this big pile, so in addition to the ones that you see up top over here, there's also all these little guys. No wonder. Looks like they're working on this persimmons. This is probably a part of the reason we got a little bit of a party happening over here. But really quick, before we disengage with this little pile of stuff that we excavated, I want to see if I could help some of these paper bits along by shredding them into smaller pieces. And let's just kind of keep these objects in a little pile so we can return them back down into the hole. Here's a stem of a pumpkin. It's going to most likely take a very, very long time, as will this one. No reason to think one's going to go any quicker than the other. And seems like we're getting one more pretty good sized jolly handful of worm fun out of here. But let's just put these little guys down and not subject them to the same light torture as the other guys received. These poor little guys, well, they were quite a good sport, I must admit. Very, very busy system. All right, why don't we get some stuff to pile into this feeding zone for them and start into the replenishment of their food supply. All right, why don't we do it like this? I figured we grab one of these napkins that I want to do away with and use that as the foundation. Nothing inhabiting this white napkin here, so we can pretty freely drop a nice handful of various yummy stuff for them into there. We'll put all the citrus stuff down into there, and we'll save all these other things, as well as a piece of carrot for each of the flanking feeding zones. And then before we return all this other stuff, I figured this might be a really good use for this old top covering paper, onto which we can pretty freely return all this other material, this leftover pumpkin stem food items, sort of, the persimmons. I'm trying to think what else there was. Persimmons, I can't remember, but whatever. Oh, carrots. Well, I think the carrots might have only been on the outer flanks, so we'll have to see when we get out there how those are coming along. I mean, this thing right here, I don't know what this thing is. It's got to be a piece of seed, the seed from something. But yeah, like I said, the last feedings were out on these edges, so let's take a quick peek in there before we proceed to dropping in the edge feedings on the other two alternating feedings. Here's a little bit of the leftover bedding that we dropped in underneath that feeding, which was some yellow napkin in this case. And it is nice to see how much of it is gone, because I'm only seeing that itsy bitsy little scrap of yellow napkin, and those napkins are huge, so to find only that much of it remaining there was a pretty good sign that they did away with it. And I didn't see anything that resembled leftover food over there either. So here again, here's a little bit of the napkin that was placed in here as a foundation for the food we plopped in for them on this side. And a good many worms hanging out here too, I must say. This is a very interesting, fun system. And it's so weird how, like, just castings are piling up everywhere. Shouldn't be so weird, considering that, we've got the age of the bin right here, 142 days. So we know full well that after that much time you can expect for sure a good many castings beginning to pile up in your worm bin. And we do have a pretty good sized population in here, it seems, too, or at least they sure make it seem that way when you bump into a whole bunch of them hanging out on the edge and in the middle and pretty much anywhere. So I think we're in the home stretch now. We've had a chance to sort of gawk a little bit at the wormies, and it was kind of fun barging in on some of those worm parties that were happening down in the middle. Out here on the sides too, it seemed like we had some fun going on, but that middle worm party was a sight to behold. And I just dropped in some of the grit. I forgot to put some into the food that we placed into the center, but that's all right. We'll just make up for it by putting a little bit extra into these outer edges, the flanks, or whatever you want to call them. And it does seem like alternating locations each time is a pretty good idea, even if there were leftovers. Other than those little bits of yellow napkin that we found on the outer edges, we'd be able to just let that leftover portion continue to get broken down slowly, while what we add today would be just sitting out here on the sides waiting for them, so that once they finish the leftovers they can get right to the fresh portion here. So a little bit of grit over here as well, and on to the grand finale, which I hope these little guys are going to appreciate. It was just going to be a bunch of dry leaves that I bought in earlier today to restock my supply. And I took extra care on this go around to really almost like try to form a snowball. I mean, not to so much form a snowball, because you can't make a snowball out of leaves, but you get the idea that I was trying to like compress and kind of, shape the material into a small tiny space and in the process break as many of the leaf stems as I could so that there'd be no big, huge leaf stems laying around. I mean, there might be a few, but for the most part, I believe I've managed to snap a good many of them. And man, oh man, that looks so nice. I think they're going to appreciate that little bit of paper bedding in with each feeding, and a whole bunch of this really awesome leafy bedding out across the entire top surface. These guys are not going to know what hit them. Hopefully they enjoy it. So the last thing I figured we would do was just try to compensate, you know, for this very dry leafy matter that's coming in here. I already kind of started getting this sense that the material in the system could probably use a little bit of moisture, and by using a dry top coating of material like this, I immediately had my excuse for getting out the water bottle and giving the system a good little dousing. I guess the nice little bonus here too is that I can get the majority of the stuff that's stuck to my glove off and limit the amount of cleaning up I need to do over at the sink afterwards. But yeah, I think this is going to work out pretty good. I think the moisture that we just added easily compensates for the dry materials that were just added. The napkins, the leaves. Got to remember though that the materials that we added as food, those all eventually start to break down and thaw out, and also we emit a little bit of moisture too. So hopefully in the end what we've done here results in a system that has just a little bit more moisture than when we started, and is a little bit more cozy for the worms than when we started. So that's it for our check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.